Good evening, folks. It's Diamond with the Oppenheimer Ranch Project, Magnetic Reversal News, Sacred Geography, and Shinrin Yoku, bringing you a grand solar minimum update Tuesday, September 12th, around 8 p.m. Mountain Time 2023. More than 5,000 dead in Libya as collapsed dams worsen the flood disaster. And we've got a close eye on Lee. The spaghetti models are all lining up. This baby is headed towards the Bay of Fundy. Keep calm. It's boom time. Storm watch, severe weather will make for a messy Wednesday morning commute. More on that. That's going to hit the East Coast there. Minnesota hailstorm on August 11th was among the latest billion-dollar disaster in the United States. There have been $23 billion disasters in the U.S. this year, and it is record-breaking. We retweeted the stats over here at Oppenheimer Ranch Project on Twitter, at Diamond the Dave. You can follow us there. We just reposted the graphic. U.S. 2023 billion-dollar weather and climate disasters. We've got tornado outbreaks causing $1 billion. 2 of them. We've got hailstorms, 4 of them costing $1 billion. This is amazing. The price of weather disasters is skyrocketing. First snowfall arrives in Colorado. This is much later than usual. Usually by mid-August we have snow, but it's now snowing pretty much everywhere. And it is raining outside. We got 1 inch in an hour today. Hours of powers. Our prayers have been answered. And for many of those living in eastern Maine or perhaps the Maritimes here, this baby, Hurricane Lee, is headed your way as a Cat 1 hurricane, potentially 2 p.m. Saturday. It's going to make its way directly into the Bay of Fundy. And that won't be such a fun day, I can imagine. Let's take a look at the key message. Dangerous surf and life-threatening currents will affect portions of the northern Leeward Islands and the Virgin Islands, Puerto Rico, Hispaniola, the Turks and Caicos, the Bahamas, Bermuda, and most of the U.S. East Coast through much of the week. So take heed. There is an increasing risk of strong winds, rainfall, and high surf impacts to Bermuda later this week, as Lee is scheduled to be close by, just offshore by maybe 100 or so miles to the west. And a tropical storm watch remains in effect for the island. It remains too soon to know what level of additional impacts Lee might have along the northeast U.S. coast and Atlantic Canada late this week and this weekend. However, since wind and rainfall hazards will extend well away from the center of Lee, as it grows in size, users should continue to monitor updates for the forecast. So stay tuned for more updates. The spaghetti models, let's take a look. They're all coming pretty much into agreement now. And the bulk of them here having the storm coming right into the Bay of Fundy here and moving across New Brunswick. So Nova Scotia, especially the eastern portion, is in harm's way. Eastern Maine and most of New Brunswick, especially eastern New Brunswick, and maybe even Prince Edward Island, as this storm makes its way up and out. So that is the forecast for Lee. Locally, heavy rain and flooding possible across the east. You can see those areas marked in green in Pennsylvania, southern New York, and Massachusetts. Locally, heavy rain, thunderstorms, and flooding are possible the next few days in parts of the Northeast and Mid-Atlantic and from portions of the Four Corners region into the drought-stricken southern plains. Lee remains a large and powerful hurricane several hundred miles south of Bermuda and will affect the East Coast with dangerous surf and life-threatening rip currents. So heed the warnings. And here we're going to take a quick look at the GFS so you can see Lee coming up the coast here and going right into the Bay of Fundy there at 975 millibars. Major tropical storm, potentially Cat 1 hurricane. So heads up, and the rainfall total showing the biggest flooding threat is for half of Maine, all of eastern Maine, and all of that New Brunswick region could be picking up 4 or 5 inches, as most of the rain is going to be offshore here. Good news. Antarctica's coldest September, a September to remember since 2012. Antarctica is continuing to hold anomalously cool, as it has been for the past few months and indeed years. The minus 80.6 C posted at Vostok, that's minus 113.1 Fahrenheit, over the weekend is the continent's lowest September reading since 2012. It's bitter cold there. And take a look, during the beginning of the ice building season, a record spike in the ice at 10 gigatons happening just last week. Look at that. A record ice gain on Iceland last week. Pretty back down to zero now. Pretty much marginal mass versus gain. But that just in a spectacular spike there at the beginning of the ice building season. Now more than 5,000 dead in Libya as collapsed dams worsen flood disaster. In a catastrophe recalling Hurricane Katrina, a heavy storm burst through dams to unleash their waters on the city of Derna, sweeping away entire neighborhoods and hundreds of people. Let's take a look at the destruction here.
هذا وديي وهذا المحقن.
10,000 people missing. Holy macaroni. Our thoughts and prayers go out to those in the flood disaster in Libya. It wipes out a quarter of a city. Thousands are dead. Thousands of people were killed. At least 10,000 are missing in Libya's floods caused by huge Mediterranean storms that burst dams, swept away buildings, and wiped out as much as a quarter of the eastern coastal city of Derna. Thanks, Hunga Tonga. Seismic update. No quakes of note. Largest rumbler 6.3 in the Philippines, 41 kilometers. Pretty normal activity for the Ring of Fire. We do have a 5.1 in Chiapas, Mexico, and on the west coast, 3.3 in Morgan Hill, California. As we're going to report now on an earthquake swarm close to Gifilglandengue Island. This is off the Reykjanes Peninsula. A flurry of activity occurring about 24 hours ago. 18 hours ago, in fact. No, that's 24 hours ago. My bad. But that has come to an end, and earthquake activity across the entire island of Iceland low. So good news. No imminent eruptions. Worldwide volcano news update. All is quiet. All normal activity. Reventador puffing. Fuego to 19. Reventador to 14. Popo to 22,000. Tucono to 8,000. Nothing spectacular. Space weather news update. The sun is quiet. Very few spots. We'll take a quick look at the latest HMI intensity here. That's about all she's worth. Some low-level activity, C flares, some M flares within the last 24 hours. But what we want to report on is a stealth CME passage and geomagnetic storm, which occurred today. There's the CME passage, shifting the BZ quite rapidly, as well as the phi angle. Density jumped, as well as plasma speed, but barely above 400 kilometers per second. And that was enough to bring us all the way up to KP 5.5, almost to G2. College Station actually got to G3 here, KP 7, geomagnetic storm. And that's quieting down, but there could still be some aurora activity tonight up in those aurora regions of northern Canada. So go out and look up. See, we see another reverberation coming up to 4. So quite interesting space weather occurring. As the Webb Space Telescope discovers methane and carbon dioxide in an exoplanet nearby. This is in the atmosphere of K2-18b. Pretty fascinating. A new investigation with NASA's James Webb Space Telescope into K2-18b, an exoplanet 8.6 times as massive as Earth, has revealed the presence of carbon-bearing molecules, including methane and carbon dioxide. This is fascinating. It means it could be a water world, and it is in the constellation of Leo, just 120 light years away. So not too far away. Fantastic discovery by Webb. And that's a boom to knowledge. Please share this video, as we are shadow banned and we need your help to grow. Become a Patreon. Support the work we do. We love you. Be safe. And that's a boom.